Today on the Cool Stuff Guys Like channel, I'm going to show you how to remove your chainsaw clutch, which you may have to do to get to the rim sprocket, which drives the chain, and is going to be one of those things that you want to replace once in a while, or, you know, you could split it like this, especially if you've got a pretty powerful saw. Now, removing the clutch is really pretty easy, but there's a couple tricks that aren't so obvious, and if you don't know about them, you could cause a lot of damage. You could break your crankshaft, you could potentially even break your piston with some of these. So I'll show you the way that I like to remove these clutches and do it a little bit safely. So the first piece of extremely useful information is that virtually all of these clutches are going to have left-hand threads. That means instead of righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, they're lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. So if you were to throw like an impact on this and put it in counterclockwise, you could snap the end of your crankshaft right off, and you've got yourself not only a really expensive part, but a really, really labor-intensive job ahead of you now, just because you didn't know that these are left-hand threads. So to take these off, you're going to have to turn them clockwise. And you can see the obvious thing is when I turn this clockwise, my engine spins. So we're going to need a way to stop the engine from spinning. And some people will use these little guys. This is a piston stop. So you use this when you're finding bottom dead center, if you're doing some mods. Like this chainsaw is pretty modified, and I'll go through that at some point on this channel. I don't like these. I think they're fine for finding bottom dead center, where you basically will screw it in, go up till the piston stops, go the other way till the piston stops, and halfway between that is bottom dead center. But the reason I don't like them is because it's got a kind of a small point. This has an angled spark plug hole. You're just, not only are you putting a lot of stress on the head, you're also putting a lot of stress on the piston. You could put a little dimple in it, which probably isn't that big of a deal, but worst case, if you're really cranking on this thing, you could potentially break your piston. So what most people are going to do is the rope trick. So they're going to shove a rope in the spark plug hole. It'll basically bind up the engine as you spin it to in the forwards direction, or reverse for that matter. But there's one thing you got to know about this. So if I look right in my spark plug hole, directly opposite, on the opposite wall, is my exhaust port. And I can shear this rope right off in the exhaust port if you're not careful. And, you know, it's probably not going to cause much damage, but you're going to need to take your muffler off and clean out everything you can. So we're going to do it in a way that we're not going to shear the rope off. So if you look down in the spark plug hole, you can try to shine a flashlight in the muffler. You can try to shine a flashlight down in the spark plug hole here. Just turn the engine until you're just past that exhaust port. Spin it clockwise if you're removing the clutch, and you're going to spin it counterclockwise if you're putting the clutch on. And then we'll just shove this rope down in there. I'm going to shove about as much as I can get in there. And then what this will do, like I said, is it'll kind of bind up the engine. And then what we can do is, now I'm going to use just a wrench, not a impact. I just don't think an impact is a super great idea on these. And see if we can get this off. So we'll push, push, push. And there you go. So then this will spin off. And even if you know this is left-hand threaded, it's so counterintuitive that you can even still make the mistake. So just try to think, just take a step back and think when you're doing this. When you put this back on, you do the opposite of what I just did. When you get above the exhaust port, just spin it backwards. And you'll have to pull the pull rope up a little bit when you're spinning it backwards, because otherwise that will bind up. But don't use any Loctite on it. These will sort of self-tighten. So when you're using the saw, it's just going to want to tighten itself. So it's not the kind of thing that's going to fall off or anything. And if you use Loctite, it's going to be a really big pain to get this off in the future. Another thing to keep in mind, if somebody did use Loctite on this and it is just not coming off, honestly, I'd probably, before I just went and put some sort of cheater bar on my wrench or got out the impact, I'd probably consider throwing a little bit of heat on this with a torch, but you don't really want to put a lot of heat on this. So maybe I take that back. Maybe it's just better just to kind of just hope and pray that it comes off. The reason you don't want to put a whole lot of heat is, well, all this stuff's heat treated, so that's the first reason. But especially these Husqvarna saws have this oiling worm gear back here. So this is plastic. Let me see if I can pull this out and show you. And you could potentially, so this drives the oiler for the chain, and you could potentially melt that a little bit if you're not careful. So usually super simple thing to do, could be a little bit tricky sometimes. When you do put these back on, just make sure that you put you oil up the little bearing in here. There's a little needle bearing. So here's my rim sprocket. This is the kind of wear item here. There's a needle bearing here. So oil it before you put it on. And then also there's a little oiling hole at the end of the crankshaft. So once in a blue moon, you should probably throw some oil on that so it doesn't get all dried up. Hope this was helpful for you. If you want to see this super souped up 257 Husqvarna, just subscribe below. I'll be making a video on that in the future. I did some really simple modifications, but you can really, really soup up the Husqvarna 257 without a lot of work, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.